So I'm delighted to have been joined by Tunde Akingbade of the Lagos Guardian. And Tunde, you've been covering these climate talks here now in Cancun for the last week. What's your impression of the talks so far, and how are you trying to report them back in Nigeria?
I think that at the moment we are not really sure of what the outcome might be. And observers and even the negotiators believe that we may not have a deal, and I believe so. But already the South Africans are waiting in the wings that if we're not going to have a deal in Mexico, in Cancun, they are waiting in South Africa to have a deal, at COP16 next year. So, but so far, people believe it's been the same talk shop, just as it happened in Copenhagen last year.
And you're the environment correspondent of a major newspaper in Nigeria. How much awareness is there of climate change issues amongst the population in Lagos and across Nigeria?
Let me start by saying that when some of us started reporting the environment over 2 decades ago, the awareness was little. And I remember there were certain COP meetings that I attended, and I was from the mid-1990s, and I was the only reporter from Nigeria that attended those COP meetings. And I was opportuned to have been there through my old school in Germany, where I also was privileged to have done courses in environmental journalism that used to bring me to those COP meetings. And even up to India and Denmark as well, in The Hague. I will be the only journalist from Nigeria covering the event. But then, the awareness was so little in those years. Even in the early 90s, I remember sometimes I would do a photo exhibition on climate change or ozone layer depletion, and you have very few people attending, and you got almost frustrated. But as we crossed the millennium into the 2000s, we found that the awareness grew, and a lot of Nigerians, the civil society, the government officials, the mayors, everybody, the awareness is there now, and they are showing interest. And some of them are also present here in Cancun. But again, if I want to answer your question on what it's been, reporting the environment, initially at the beginning, it was tough. Because even some editors didn't understand why you should be reporting the issues bordering on birds and butterflies.
But is that getting easier now? Do people recognise that climate change is an issue that will really affect people and that it will affect people in Nigeria? Are people more receptive to your coverage?
Yes, now. But let me also go back a little bit. Even then, the Guardian was a foremost newspaper, and still a foremost newspaper, in reporting issues on environment. Not only environment, even on science. I used to have a page in the Guardian called New Horizon, which was based on latest scientific breakthroughs in environment and other, 2 full pages. And it was only the Guardian that was doing that. And you find that the intellectual community, the public grew to love the Guardian for reporting environment, and they got a lot of awareness through the Guardian. And at the moment, a lot of people are getting more information on a regular basis.
Is it across society though, or is it mainly elites that kind of are getting this information? Do people who are poorer in Nigeria, do they understand climate change, do you feel?
Generally, both the print and the electronic media now, a lot of people are getting more involved in climate change issues, especially when they now begin to see the reality of climate change, just facing them. 2 months ago, there was flooding in Lagos. The Atlantic Ocean, intruded. There was sea intrusion and into Ogun River, a major river that flows down into Lagos. And so all the communities around that river, along the banks of the river, were displaced. And even the president of Nigeria, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, the governor of Lagos State, Mr. Rajiv Fashola, visited these communities. Then the Director General of a National Emergency Management Agency, the new Director General, also visited. And in fact, he came here to Cancun, and I had some discussions with him as well. So they visited these people, and for such people, they have even realized the enormity of the problem of climate change, because they can see it physically. And even while here in Cancun, a traditional ruler in one of the coastal areas of Lagos that is very vulnerable, one of the hot spots that had been warned that could be displaced, that the government had warned that they may be displaced at any time because of any slight rise in the sea level. Actually, through one of his aides, sent me a message, that I should feed them with more information from Cancun.
So there's a real thirst for information to what's going on here, because people recognize that it will affect their lives.
Exactly. So people now realize that it was unlike in the past when people thought we were reporting issues on butterflies and birds. They now know that climate change is a reality, and it's a problem that everyone is vulnerable, especially when it comes to food security, agriculture. If you look at Nigeria as a whole, when people ask me when I come to international gathering like this, they ask me, what are the environmental problems in your country? I say, we've got all the problems except nuclear fallout. So we have all the problems: desertification, flooding, coastal erosion problem, waste management problem. And for example, methane gas comes from the dump sites and also from animal waste. And methane is a worse greenhouse gas than CO2. So we've got all these problems.
But also, of course, Nigeria's economy is heavily dependent on oil and exporting oil. And I think the gas flaring alone in Nigeria, that companies like Shell do, kind of contributes more CO2 to the atmosphere than the whole of the rest of Africa put together, or it's some kind of shocking statistic like that. So it's clearly it plays a big role. Is there a tension here between kind of an economy dependent on burning fossil fuels and the kind of climate change issue which requires us to move away from fossil fuels? Is that something that's acknowledged in Nigeria?
Let me answer your question by putting this way, that it is true that there's so much gas flaring in Nigeria, and it's been like that for years, which is sad. And Nigeria is one of the greatest gas flaring countries in the world. So in the beginning, the National Petroleum Corporation foot dragged in the area of trying to stop the gas flaring, and we had successive military governments that depended so much on the huge money that comes from oil, and they were not bothered about how to re-inject this gas and utilize them. The gas that is being flared in Nigeria on a daily basis, according to figures, is enough to electrify the whole of West Africa non-stop. Yet we flare and waste money. Some people believe that we have been burning our money, burning our resources away in Nigeria, and that is the truth. Unfortunately, too, we have energy crisis. The gas that we will have used to electrify our homes and heat certain homes, and also maybe use the air conditioning system in certain homes when there's heat, we are burning them away. So Nigeria is also in darkness. you've been to Lagos, and if you fly into Lagos in the night, you see that sometimes it's dark. There's power outage. We need to have utilized the gas. But unfortunately, like I said, the military that had been in power never thought of utilizing such a gas that for the benefit of the country. So what they were doing, even there were laws that were against gas flaring, but there was no enforcement on some of these huge multinational oil giants like Shell, and they had a way of shifting. Sometimes when they put a date to stop the gas flare or a year, then I believe strongly that they have a way of manipulation and trying to work around it, and also work around some government officials, and they shift the date.
The WikiLeaks revelations of the last couple of days would certainly suggest that Shell has a powerful role within the Nigerian government.
Obviously, I believe even before the WikiLeaks, that Shell has a powerful role within the Nigerian government. And if you remember, Shell was also accused, in the judicial murder of Cancun, the Ogoni human rights activist. And for many years, Shell was not allowed to even come to certain areas in the Niger Delta. So, in the last 10 years, the gas flare were almost, dates to stop those gas flares were fixed. But somehow, when we were about getting to those days, they have something else happen, and they shift the dates.
But do you think there's aside from this issue of the flaring, do you think there's a broader issue that maybe people living in poor countries often feel poverty very, very close to their daily lives? Poverty is just something that is with them all the time. And for some people, I think climate change seems to be the same. They experience climate change every single day. But for others, maybe if you see the poverty, but if you don't yet see the impacts of climate change, and if you don't if you don't feel that climate change will increase your poverty, then maybe it seems like less of a priority. So do you feel that kind of there's a perception that maybe climate change is not the highest priority, that poverty issues and kind of dealing with corruption or dealing with kind of separatists in the Niger Delta and conflict is it a more important issue? Where is climate change on the kind of hierarchy of issues in Nigeria? Do people recognise that it's something that will impact their daily lives?
Yes, people realise that. Even for the local illiterate farmers, they tell you that something is going wrong, but they just can't place it. For example, I used to tell people the story of a Kenyan farmer who was reported sometimes some years ago. His crops were having problems, his animals were dying, and what people might think that he was ignorant or he didn't know anything, he was illiterate. He knew that something was wrong with the weather. And when they asked him what was going on, he said he couldn't understand, but he thinks that the weather is confused. So, I bring that back also to the Nigerian illiterate farmer. He knows, he may not be able to know the science of climate change. He may not be able to know what is called CO2 or methane or, the problem of ozone layer depletion and stuff like that, or CFCs and so on. But he knows that the weather is confused, unquote, and he knows that something is wrong. So, and he knows that when he's feeling the heat, especially on a lot of people now, even in the daytime when it's hot, they go under trees. Even the animals go under trees now, which is an indication that the weather was not what it used to be. So people, they are aware that something is wrong, but they just can't fathom it. But when they listen to the radio or the television in the local language, then they're able to place it. Or in some local newspapers, then they're able to place it that something is wrong. And the government has been doing a lot of awareness in the local language to tell them, translate. They've been able to translate climate change from English into the local language for them to know that the climate, the weather, the sky, is changing and is going to have effects on the people. But again, I also want to add that even the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation that we were talking about earlier on, they've been able to also realize that this is the time to take the bull by the horn and change from their old ways of gas flaring into renewable energy. And I tell you, 2 days ago at the Nigerian night, NNPC displayed flyers. They also spoke on their new roads in the area of renewable energy. And apart from that, they also displayed some flyers indicating that NNPC is trying to go green.
Well, fingers crossed. That would be quite an achievement. I want to ask you about covering these talks as a journalist from Nigeria. How easy is it to kind of access the people you need to access? Like, these talks are so huge and there's thousands of delegates and people here. What's your experience in trying to cover these talks and trying to make them comprehensible and understandable to people kind of back at home in Nigeria?
I've been covering COP meetings in the past, and I know what to go for. So what I do is look for the daily bulletins and also try to look for the daily program of events and go for the key issues and key personalities that I know can give me news. And apart from that, both internationally and locally, I try to do that. But apart from that, I also try to look for the Nigerian delegation, because that will be the focus of my paper, to be able to report them on what they are actually doing here in Copenhagen. And
Cancun.
In Cancun. Sorry, in Cancun. Both of them have C's. And what they are doing in Cancun. So, apart from that, I also try to report the civil society, the mayors that are here, and also ask them about their experiences here, which is very important, and how they intend to impart the knowledge that they are gaining here back home. Because every day we're all students, we learn new things. As we are here, I'm learning as well. And I told them that it's like we are in a huge classroom in Cancun, learning environment and climate change. So what do you learn from here that you take back home to impact on your local communities, on the government, policymakers? Here we have lawmakers as well. So it's an event that I chose to report these individuals, and also try to, as much as possible, relate what they are doing here to certain key environmental problems that we have back home. And so far, so good, I've been able to succeed in doing that.
Okay. Tunde, thank you ever so much for speaking to us. It's been really interesting, and I wish you luck in the last couple of days of the talks to get the stories back home.
Thank you very much.